"We're making some difficult decisions due to budget constraints," Bryce Hamilton said, his voice flat as he slid a folder across the conference table. "Your position has been eliminated, effective immediately." I sat frozen in the sterile meeting room, Bryce on one side and Patricia from HR on the other. Both wore practiced expressions of corporate sympathy that didn't reach their eyes. The folder contained my termination paperwork, standard severance, 2 weeks' pay, healthcare through the end of the month. My name is Alex Morrison, and I'd spent 7 years at Hyperion Financial Services. 7 years managing the payroll automation system that processed payments for 12,000 employees across 4 states. I'd built that system from scratch, debugging it at midnight, updating it on weekends, making it bulletproof. "We appreciate your contributions," Patricia added mechanically. "Security will escort you to collect your belongings." I looked at Bryce, whose eyes shifted to his phone. He'd seemed nervous all morning, almost eager to get this over with. Something felt wrong, but I couldn't pinpoint what. "I understand," I replied calmly, standing up. They both looked relieved, probably expecting tears or arguments. Instead, I picked up my phone and walked out with perfect composure. What they didn't know was that I'd seen this coming for weeks, and I'd prepared for exactly this moment. 3 weeks earlier, everything had seemed normal. I was the senior payroll systems administrator, the person everyone called when something broke. My boss, Bryce, praised my efficiency in team meetings. The executives loved how much money my automation saved them. But then the merger talk started. Hyperion was being acquired by Titan Industries, a massive corporation known for aggressive cost-cutting. Rumors swirled about layoffs and restructuring. People started updating their resumes, quietly. I noticed small signs. Bryce stopped inviting me to planning meetings. IT began restricting access to certain financial databases. New consultants from Titan appeared in the building, taking notes and asking pointed questions about workflows. One Friday afternoon, I received a calendar invitation by mistake. The subject line read, Phase 2 Integration, Redundancy Analysis. My name appeared on a spreadsheet attachment under a column labeled Non-Essential Personnel. Non-essential. Me. The person who designed and maintained the entire payroll infrastructure. I sat at my desk, staring at that spreadsheet, feeling something cold settle in my chest. Then I did what any smart person would do. I started documenting everything. Every system password, every process, every workaround that kept the payroll system running smoothly. I cataloged it all in encrypted files on my personal laptop. The week before my termination, I discovered something interesting while reviewing my employment contract. Buried in Section 12 was a clause about intellectual property, systems developed independently using personal resources outside standard work hours remain the property of the developer. I'd built the payroll automation system's core framework during unpaid overtime, using my personal laptop because the company equipment was too slow. I had timestamp files, development logs, and email records proving it. Technically, legally, the foundational code was mine. I pulled every relevant document from my home files, the original contract I'd negotiated 7 years ago, get commits showing development history, calendar entries proving when I'd worked. Everything pointed to the same conclusion. I owned the underlying architecture of the system Hyperion depended on. That weekend, I made secure backups of my documentation. I organized everything chronologically, added explanatory notes, and stored it in 3 separate cloud locations. If Hyperion wanted to claim ownership, they'd need to prove I developed it on company time with company resources. They couldn't. Sunday night, I received a text from my friend Carlos in IT. Heard Bryce is cleaning house Monday. Watch your back. I replied, already watching. Then I composed an email to a recruiter I'd been ignoring for months. Subject line, ready to talk. Monday morning arrived with gray clouds and cold rain. I came to work early, as always, and reviewed the payroll system one last time. Everything was running perfectly. The next payment cycle would process in 48 hours, 12,000 paychecks hitting accounts automatically. At 9:15, Bryce's assistant appeared at my desk. Conference room B. Now. I grabbed my phone and followed her down the hallway. Through the glass walls, I could see Bryce and Patricia already seated, termination folder ready. The meeting lasted exactly 11 minutes. Budget cuts, Position eliminated. Thank you for your service. Security waiting in the lobby. I signed the paperwork without arguing. No scenes, no accusations, just quiet professionalism. Patricia looked almost disappointed by my composure. As I walked back to my desk, colleagues avoided eye contact. Word had spread fast. The security guard, a nice older man named Frank, stood nearby with a cardboard box. Sorry about this, Alex, Frank said quietly. You were always decent to me. Thanks, Frank. Just doing your job. I packed my personal items methodically. Family photos, a coffee mug from my daughter, the small plant my team had given me last Christmas. Nothing from the company computer. Nothing proprietary. Because everything important was already backed up at home. I carried my box through the lobby at 10:43, walking past the receptionist who wouldn't meet my eyes. The rain had stopped, leaving puddles reflecting the gray sky. I placed the box in my trunk and sat in my car, processing what had just happened. My phone buzzed. A text from Carlos. They escorted you out? This is insane. I replied, yeah, it's done. Another text appeared, this time from someone I didn't recognize. This is Olivia Chun from Summit Solutions. Saw your LinkedIn update. Available to talk today. Summit Solutions was Hyperion's biggest competitor. I'd heard they were aggressively expanding their payroll services division. Available afternoon, I typed back. My phone rang. It was my wife, Angela. I heard. You okay? I'm fine, I said honestly. Actually, I'm more than fine. This might be the best thing that ever happened. She knew that tone in my voice. What did you do? Nothing yet, but I prepared for this. They have no idea what's coming. Angela laughed quietly. Good. They deserve whatever happens next. I started my car and drove away from Hyperion Financial Services for what I assumed would be the last time. I was wrong, but not in the way they expected. I arrived home at 11:30 and opened my laptop. The first thing I did was compile all my documentation into a single organized folder: employment contract, development logs, Git commits, email trails, everything proving ownership of my work. Then I reviewed the payroll system's architecture. The core automation framework I had built handled everything: calculating wages, processing deductions, generating tax reports, interfacing with banks. Without it, they'd need to manually process 12,000 paychecks. But here's what Hyperion didn't understand. The system wasn't just code running on their servers. It required specific knowledge to maintain. There were quirks, workarounds, and customizations that existed only in my head or in documentation I'd kept on personal drives. My phone rang at 12:15. Unknown number. Hello, Alex Morrison? This is Olivia Chun from Summit Solutions. Thanks for responding so quickly. We talked for 45 minutes. Olivia explained that Summit was building a next-generation payroll platform and needed someone who understood enterprise-level automation. The compensation, she mentioned, made my current salary look like an internship stipend. I'd like you to meet our CEO tomorrow, Olivia said. Can you make 2 p.m.? Absolutely. After hanging up, I sat back and smiled. Everything was falling into place faster than I'd expected. Then, at exactly 2:37 p.m., my phone rang again. This time, it was Hyperion's payroll department. Alex! It's Denise from Payroll. Her voice was tight with panic. I know you're not with the company anymore, but we have a situation. A big situation. I let the silence stretch for a moment. What kind of situation? The automated payroll system crashed. We can't access anything. The payment cycle is supposed to run tomorrow, and we're completely locked out. My pulse quickened, but I kept my voice calm. Did you contact IT? They're here now. They can't figure it out. Nothing they try works. The system keeps throwing error codes nobody understands. Of course, they didn't understand. I designed those error protocols myself using custom logic that wasn't documented anywhere in company files. Denise, I don't work there anymore. This isn't my problem. Please, Alex. 12,000 employees won't get paid if we can't fix this. Can you at least tell us what might be wrong? I considered for a moment. Have you spoken to Bryce about this? He's in emergency meetings with the executives. They're freaking out. I'm sure IT will figure it out, I said pleasantly. Good luck. I ended the call and sat staring at my phone. The system hadn't crashed. I knew that. But something had clearly gone wrong with their access or configuration. Then it hit me. The automated updates. I'd scheduled a system update for today that required manual authorization to complete. Without that authorization, the system would lock down as a safety protocol. And I was the only person who knew how to authorize it. My phone rang 4 more times in the next hour. Denise twice, Bryce once, and someone from IT I didn't recognize. I let them all go to voicemail. The messages grew increasingly desperate. Alex, please call back. We need your help. This is Bryce. We should talk. There might have been a misunderstanding about your termination. Alex, this is Kyle from IT. We're willing to pay you as a contractor to help resolve this. Name your price. I listened to each message with satisfaction, then deleted them. At 4:30, my phone rang again. This time, it was Patricia from HR. Alex, we need to discuss bringing you back temporarily to address a technical issue. I'm not interested in temporary work, Patricia. I'm exploring other opportunities. We understand you're upset about the termination, but this is urgent. Thousands of people won't receive paychecks tomorrow if we can't access the payroll system. That sounds like a Hyperion problem, not an Alex problem. We're prepared to offer a consulting rate of $200 per hour. I almost laughed. Patricia, I was just fired for budget reasons. Clearly, the company can't afford to pay me. I wouldn't want to create additional financial burden. Her voice tightened. This isn't a joke, Alex. People's livelihoods are at stake. You're right. It's not a joke. It's karma. I hung up. At 5 p.m., I received an email from Bryce with the subject line, "Urgent, please read." I opened it and read his carefully worded message asking me to reconsider helping with the technical situation. He mentioned the company's commitment to treating employees fairly and suggested my termination might have been premature. I replied with 3 sentences. Thank you for reaching out. I'm currently evaluating opportunities with other organizations. Best wishes with your technical challenges. Angela came home at 6 and found me on the couch, looking relaxed for the first time in weeks. You seem suspiciously happy for someone who got fired today, she said. I told her about the calls, about the payroll system crisis, about the increasingly desperate messages. They can't process payroll without you, she asked. They can eventually, but not by tomorrow. And definitely not without understanding the system architecture, which exists primarily in documentation I kept on personal drives. Is that legal? Completely. I built the core system on my own time using my own equipment. My contract explicitly protected that intellectual property. Angela sat down beside me. So what's your plan? Tomorrow, I meet with Summit Solutions. They're offering triple my salary to build a new system for them. As for Hyperion, I smiled. They're about to learn an expensive lesson about treating people as expendable. My phone rang again. Unknown number. I answered. Mr. Morrison? This is Vincent Castellano, CFO of Hyperion Financial Services. We need to talk. Vincent Castellano's voice carried the clipped authority of someone used to being obeyed. Mr. Morrison, I understand there's been a misunderstanding regarding your termination. I'd like to discuss your immediate return to the company. There's no misunderstanding, Mr. Castellano. I was fired for budget reasons. Your words, via Bryce. That decision was made without full consideration of your essential role in our operations. We're prepared to reinstate your position with a significant raise. I stood up and walked to my home office, putting him on speaker. Define significant. 20% increase, effective immediately. And what about next month when budget pressures return? Will I be essential then? He hesitated. We value your contributions, Mr. Morrison. You valued my contributions until this morning, when you decided I was expendable. Now you value them again because you can't process payroll. That's not value, that's panic. Listen, Vincent said, his tone hardening. The payroll system you built runs on our servers, using our data. That makes it our property. If you're deliberately withholding access, that's a serious legal issue. I smiled, having expected this. Mr. Castellano, I suggest you review the intellectual property clause in my employment contract, specifically Section 12. The core system architecture was developed on my personal equipment during my personal time. I have extensive documentation proving this. Silence on the other end. Furthermore, I continued. The system isn't broken. It's simply following protocols I designed. Your IT team lacks the knowledge to properly operate it, which is unfortunate. But that's not a legal problem, it's a training problem. Are you actually refusing to help thousands of employees receive their paychecks? His voice dripped with disgust. I'm a private citizen with no obligation to Hyperion Financial Services. You made that clear this morning. I hung up before he could respond. That evening, I received an email from Hyperion's legal department threatening action if I didn't provide immediate assistance with critical company systems. I forwarded it to an employment attorney I'd consulted earlier, who called me within 20 minutes. They don't have a case, he said after reviewing everything. Your contract is airtight. You built that system independently, you have proof, and they terminated you. They can't force you to work. What if they claim sabotage? Did you sabotage anything? No. The system is functioning exactly as designed. They just don't know how to operate it properly. Then they're bluffing. Let them send threats. It won't go anywhere. I slept better that night than I had in months. The next morning, Tuesday, I woke to 17 missed calls and 32 text messages. The payroll processing deadline was 8 hours away, and Hyperion was in full crisis mode. I ignored all of it and focused on preparing for my meeting with Summit Solutions. At noon, Carlos texted me, "Complete chaos here. Executives in emergency meetings. People worried about getting paid. Bryce looks like he's having a breakdown." I replied, "Not my circus, not my monkeys." At 1 p.m., my phone rang. It was the CEO of Hyperion, Kenneth Frost, a man I'd only met twice in 7 years. "Mr. Morrison, I'm calling personally to appeal to your better judgment," he began. I let him talk. Kenneth Frost's voice was smooth, practiced, the tone of someone who'd negotiated million-dollar deals. "Alex, may I call you Alex? I understand you're upset. Bryce made a mistake. Let's be honest, this whole situation was mishandled." "It wasn't mishandled," I replied calmly. "It was executed exactly as Bryce intended. I was expendable this morning. Now I'm essential. The only thing that changed was your ability to function without me. We're prepared to offer you a VP position, 50% salary increase, full benefits, equity options. You'd report directly to me." I walked to my window, watching traffic pass by. And when the next budget crisis comes, when Titan Industries decides to cut deeper, what happens to the newly promoted VP then? That won't happen. It already happened once. Why would I trust it won't happen again? Kenneth's voice hardened slightly. "I'm trying to be reasonable here. You built systems using company resources on company time. Legally, we could argue." "Mr. Frost," I interrupted, "I'm going to stop you right there. I've already spoken to my attorney. My contract explicitly protects intellectual property developed independently. I have 7 years of documentation proving the core system was built on my personal equipment during unpaid overtime." I paused, letting that sink in. "But here's what really matters. Your payroll system will process today's cycle in about 6 hours. After that, you have 2 weeks until the next one. That's 2 weeks to figure out how to operate without me. I suggest you use that time wisely." "You're making a mistake," Kenneth said. "No, Mr. Frost. You made a mistake this morning when you let Bryce fire your only person who understood the infrastructure keeping your company running." I hung up. At 2 p.m., I arrived at Summit Solutions headquarters in downtown Seattle. The building was modern glass and steel, completely different from Hyperion's dated corporate complex. Olivia Chin met me in the lobby. She was younger than I'd expected, maybe 35, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. "Alex Morrison, welcome. Maxwell is excited to meet you." Maxwell Reeves, Summit's CEO, greeted me in a top-floor conference room with views of Elliott Bay. He was direct, asking detailed technical questions about payroll automation, integration challenges, and scalability issues. I answered everything thoroughly, explaining my philosophy about building systems that were both powerful and maintainable. "I heard about your situation at Hyperion," Maxwell said after 40 minutes. "They let you go this morning." "Budget cuts," I replied neutrally. "And now they're calling you nonstop because their payroll system won't work." I met his gaze steadily. "That's my understanding." Maxwell laughed. "That's the best recruiting story I've heard in years. They fire the person who built their infrastructure, then panic when they can't operate without him. To be fair, the system works fine. They just don't know how to use it properly. Which brings me to my offer. Maxwell slid a folder across the table. We want you to build Summit's next-generation payroll platform from the ground up. Full autonomy, team of 10 engineers reporting to you, budget to do it right. I opened the folder. The compensation was staggering. Triple my Hyperion salary, equity, signing bonus, and benefits that made my old package look like an insult. When could I start? I asked. How about next Monday? I extended my hand. You have a deal. I left Summit Solutions at 4:30 feeling lighter than I had in years. The offer letter was in my briefcase, signed and ready to return. My future was secure, my value finally recognized. My phone rang as I walked to my car. It was Bryce. I answered out of curiosity. Hello, Bryce. Alex, please. You have to help us. His voice was ragged, desperate. The executives are talking about legal action. Kenneth is furious. If we don't process payroll today, the company could face massive penalties. You fired me for budget reasons, I said calmly. Surely hiring me back creates the same budget problem. That was a mistake. I admit it. I was under pressure from Titan to cut costs. Your name came up because your salary was high. I didn't realize how essential you were. You didn't realize, I repeated slowly, that the person who built and maintained your entire payroll infrastructure was essential? Silence. Bryce, I have a question. When you made that list of people to fire, did you actually understand what any of us did? Or did you just cut whoever had the highest salaries? I made the best decisions I could with the information available. No, you made the cheapest decisions you could without understanding the consequences. Now you're paying for it. Alex, please. I hung up. At 5 p.m., Carlos sent another update. Payroll processed. They got it working somehow. But Kyle said they had to do a bunch of manual workarounds and barely made the deadline. Everyone's exhausted. I smiled. They'd gotten lucky this time. But in 2 weeks, they'd face the same crisis again. And again. And again. That evening, Angela and I celebrated my new position at Summit. Over dinner, I explained the technical details of what had happened at Hyperion. So the system didn't actually crash, she asked. No. It encountered a scheduled update that required manual authorization, something I designed as a security feature. Without proper authorization, it locks down to prevent unauthorized changes. And only you knew how to authorize it. I documented it in files they don't have access to. Eventually, their IT team found a workaround, but it's temporary. They're using Band-Aids on a system they don't fully understand. What happens in 2 weeks at the next payroll cycle? They'll face new challenges, different errors, different protocols. The system is complex by design. It has to be to handle 12,000 employees across multiple states. Without deep knowledge of the architecture, they're just guessing. Angela raised her glass. To Hyperion, learning expensive lessons about undervaluing talent. We clinked glasses. The next morning, Wednesday, I received an email from Kenneth Frost with the subject line, Final offer. I opened it, curious about his definition of final. The email outlined a compensation package that exceeded even Summit's offer, VP title, equity, guaranteed employment contract, bonuses. It was everything I could have wanted 3 days ago. I replied with a single sentence, I've accepted a position elsewhere, effective Monday. His response came within minutes. You're making a vindictive decision that will damage your professional reputation. I didn't bother replying. Thursday afternoon, I received a call from Patricia in HR. Alex, I'm calling to inform you that Hyperion is pursuing legal action regarding your employment termination and subsequent refusal to provide system access. I put her on speaker and started recording. On what grounds? Breach of contract and deliberate sabotage of company systems. I laughed. Patricia, I signed termination papers on Monday. There's no contract to breach. And I didn't sabotage anything. Their IT team successfully processed payroll yesterday. You withheld critical information that endangered company operations. I'm a private citizen. I have no obligation to provide information to former employers, especially those who fired me for budget reasons. Our attorneys disagree. Then I look forward to receiving their formal complaint. Please have them send it to my attorney. I provided the contact information and hung up. My attorney called me an hour later, laughing. They're bluffing. This is intimidation. If they actually file, we'll countersue for wrongful termination and emotional distress. They'll lose badly. Good to know. Alex, they're desperate. Hyperion's payroll issues are apparently becoming public knowledge. Clients are asking questions. The merger with Titan is in jeopardy. They need a scapegoat. They need someone to fix their problems, I corrected. But that person doesn't work there anymore. Friday brought more messages from Hyperion employees I'd worked with over the years. Most were supportive. Some were angry about the payroll chaos. A few were confused about what had happened. I responded selectively, thanking people for their support and maintaining strict silence about the technical details. At noon, Carlos called. You need to hear this. It's all over the office. Carlos sounded both amused and horrified. Kenneth called an all-hands meeting this morning. He announced that you'd been terminated due to restructuring, but that your departure had revealed process vulnerabilities in critical systems. Process vulnerabilities? I repeated. That's one way to describe it. He said Hyperion is taking steps to ensure better documentation and knowledge transfer moving forward. Then he thanked IT for their heroic efforts to keep payroll running. Did he mention that those heroic efforts were necessary because he approved my termination? Not once. He made it sound like you'd left unexpectedly, and they'd valiantly handled the transition. A few people asked questions about why you were really let go, but he shut that down fast. I shook my head. So I'm the problem for not documenting enough, not them for firing the person who built everything? Pretty much. But Alex, people aren't stupid. Everyone knows what happened. The official story doesn't match reality, and rumors are spreading fast. After hanging up, I drafted a LinkedIn post. It was time to control the narrative. After 7 years at Hyperion Financial Services, my position was eliminated due to budget constraints. I'm grateful for the experience and excited to announce I'm joining Summit Solutions as Director of Payroll Systems Engineering. Looking forward to building next-generation solutions with an incredible team. I posted it and watched the responses flood in within minutes. The LinkedIn post exploded. Within 2 hours, it had 300 likes and 50 comments. Many were from Hyperion employees expressing shock and support. Several were from industry professionals questioning Hyperion's decision-making. One comment stood out. Hyperion let go the architect of their entire payroll infrastructure? That's bold. Another. Summit just gained a huge advantage in the market. Congratulations, Alex. Former colleagues messaged me privately. Is it true they didn't realize you built everything? Can you take me with you to Summit? This company is falling apart without you. I responded to the supportive messages and ignored the negative ones. There were a few. People who thought I should have helped Hyperion despite being terminated. People who saw my refusal as unprofessional. I didn't engage. The facts spoke for themselves. That afternoon, a business journalist from a local tech publication reached out. Would you be willing to discuss your transition from Hyperion to Summit? I'm working on a story about talent retention in the financial services industry. I politely declined. The last thing I needed was to become the public face of workplace revenge stories. But privately, I knew the damage to Hyperion's reputation was already done. In an industry built on trust and reliability, the story of a company that couldn't process payroll because they'd fired their only expert was devastating. Friday evening, Angela and I went out to celebrate my last weekend before starting at Summit. As we sat in our favorite restaurant, my phone buzzed with an email. It was from Bryce. Bryce's email had no subject line. Just a personal message sent from his private account. Alex, I need to apologize. Not as your former manager, but as someone who made a terrible mistake. I let pressure from executives and Titan cloud my judgment. I created a spreadsheet of high salaries without considering what those people actually did. Your name went on the list, and I didn't question it. I didn't understand the payroll system. I didn't realize you'd built it from scratch. I assumed IT could handle anything that came up. I was wrong about all of it. Since Monday, I've spent every day in emergency meetings. The payroll crisis has damaged Hyperion's reputation with clients. The merger with Titan is being reevaluated. 3 other key employees quit this week, saying they don't trust the company's leadership. Kenneth is looking for someone to blame, and that person is me. I'll probably be let go by Monday. I know you have no reason to help me or Hyperion, but if you have any advice for how we can stabilize the payroll system, I'd be grateful. Not for the company, but for the people who still work here and depend on getting paid. I'm sorry for what I did to you. You deserve better. Bryce. I read it twice, feeling a complex mix of emotions. Anger at what he'd done, pity for his situation, satisfaction at his consequences, and a small amount of respect for his honest apology. I showed it to Angela. What do you think? Do you want to help him? Part of me does. But helping him means helping Hyperion, and they tried to intimidate me with legal threats this week. Then don't, Angela said simply. You don't owe them anything. She was right. I closed my email without responding. Monday morning arrived bright and clear. My first day at Summit Solutions. I wore my best suit and arrived 30 minutes early. Olivia met me in the lobby with a smile. Ready to build something amazing? Absolutely. She introduced me to my team, 10 talented engineers who'd been assembled specifically for this project. We spent the morning discussing vision, architecture, and timelines. The energy was incredible, everyone excited about creating something new. At lunch, Maxwell stopped by. How's your first day? Excellent. This team is impressive. Good. We're investing heavily in this platform. Hyperion's public struggles have created an opportunity for us. Several of their clients have reached out about switching providers. I nodded. The payroll issues, among other things. Word is spreading that they can't reliably process payments. In this industry, reliability is everything. After Maxwell left, I checked my phone. 17 messages from unknown numbers, all from Hyperion employees or executives trying one last time to get me to consult. I deleted them all. At 3 p.m., my attorney called. Hyperion withdrew their legal threats. No explanation, just a formal notice that they're no longer pursuing action. They finally talked to a real lawyer who explained they had no case, I said. Probably. They also sent a standard release asking you to sign away any claims against them in exchange for an enhanced severance package. How enhanced? 6 months' salary instead of 2 weeks. I considered it. The money would be nice, but signing meant I couldn't sue for wrongful termination later. What do you recommend? Take it. You're in a better position now anyway, and it closes the door on any future drama. I agreed and signed the documents electronically that evening. My second week at Summit was even better than the first. The team made rapid progress on the system architecture. We held design sessions, reviewed technical specifications, and began building prototypes. On Wednesday, Olivia invited me to lunch. I wanted to give you an update on the market situation. Hyperion lost 2 major clients this week, both cited concerns about operational stability. Where did they go? One came to us. The other went to core payroll. But the interesting thing is why they left. Both specifically mentioned the payroll crisis and loss of institutional knowledge when you departed. I absorbed this. My departure hadn't just hurt Hyperion temporarily, it had created lasting damage to their market position. There's more, Olivia continued. We're hearing Titan Industries might back out of the merger. Hyperion's value has dropped significantly in the past 2 weeks. Because they can't guarantee reliable payroll processing. That's part of it. But also because the incident raised questions about their internal processes and leadership. If they didn't know their payroll system was dependent on one person, what else don't they know? That afternoon, Carlos texted me. Bryce was fired this morning. Kenneth announced it in a staff meeting. They're bringing in new leadership from outside. I felt a brief pang of sympathy for Bryce, but it passed quickly. He'd made his decisions. Now he lived with the consequences. Friday evening, Angela and I were watching TV when my phone rang. Unknown number from Hyperion's area code. Against my better judgment, I answered. Alex Morrison? An unfamiliar voice. This is Troy Fletcher. I'm the new COO at Hyperion. Troy Fletcher's voice was calm, measured, completely different from the panicked calls I'd received 2 weeks earlier. Mr. Morrison, I want to start by apologizing for how your termination was handled. It was a mistake that never should have happened. I appreciate the apology, Mr. Fletcher. I've spent the past week reviewing what went wrong. The short version is that leadership made decisions about cost-cutting without fully understanding operational dependencies. Your departure exposed critical vulnerabilities we didn't know existed. I said nothing, letting him continue. I'm not calling to ask you to return to Hyperion. I understand you've moved on to Summit, and frankly, I can't blame you. But I do want to discuss a potential consulting arrangement to help us transition to a more sustainable system. What kind of consulting? Documentation review, knowledge transfer to our new payroll team, maybe some advisory work as we rebuild. Short-term, well-compensated, strictly professional. I leaned back, considering. Mr. Fletcher, 2 weeks ago your company threatened me with legal action. Now you want me to consult? That was Kenneth's reaction, and it was wrong. Those threats have been withdrawn, and the situation resolved. I'm trying to clean up multiple messes left by previous leadership. What happened to Kenneth? He's still CEO, but the board is watching him closely. The Titan merger is on hold pending operational improvements. Losing you created a cascade of problems we're still addressing. I'm listening. I'd like to offer you a 6-month consulting contract. 20 hours per month, $250 per hour, to help transition your knowledge to our new team. No obligation to do hands-on work, just answer questions and review documentation. I did the math quickly. 20 hours per month at $250 per hour was $5,000 monthly, $30,000 over 6 months. Not insignificant money, especially for part-time work that wouldn't interfere with Summit. I need to check if Summit has any conflict of interest issues, I said. But hypothetically, what would this consulting entail? 3 main areas, Troy replied. First, reviewing current system documentation to identify gaps. Second, answering technical questions from our new payroll systems team as they learn the infrastructure. Third, advising on best practices for knowledge management and system redundancy so we're never this vulnerable again. You're basically asking me to help train my replacement. I'm asking you to help ensure 12,000 employees get paid reliably while we rebuild institutional knowledge. I understand that's a lot to ask given how you were treated. I appreciated his honesty. Give me 24 hours. I'll discuss with Summit and my attorney. Fair enough. One more thing. We've established new protocols to prevent what happened to you from happening to anyone else. Mandatory knowledge transfer documentation, cross-training requirements, executive approval for terminating anyone in critical roles. It's too late for you, but it might help others. After hanging up, I sat thinking. The vindictive part of me wanted to refuse, to let Hyperion struggle. But the professional part recognized this as an opportunity, good money for minimal work, plus the satisfaction of setting up systems that would prevent future employees from experiencing what I had. I called Maxwell Reeves. I need to run something by you. I explained Troy's offer. Maxwell listened without interrupting. Will it interfere with your work here? He asked when I finished. No. 20 hours a month, mostly remote. I can do it evenings and weekends. Then I have no objection. Summit doesn't have any contractual issues with outside consulting, as long as it's not for direct competitors in active business areas. Hyperion isn't competing with us. Not anymore, Maxwell said with dark humor. They're barely surviving. I called Troy Fletcher back Saturday morning. I've checked with Summit Solutions. They have no objection to a consulting arrangement under the terms you described. But I have conditions. Name them. First, everything in writing. Formal contract reviewed by my attorney. Second, payment in advance for each month, no invoicing delays. Third, I work entirely remotely. No visiting Hyperion offices. Fourth, I deal directly with the technical team, not through management intermediaries. All acceptable. Anything else? Yes. One of the conditions of his contract is that Hyperion establishes a formal process for knowledge transfer and succession planning. I want documentation requirements written into company policy so no other employee ends up in my situation. Troy was quiet for a moment. That's actually something we're already working on. I'll make sure it's completed and formalized as part of this consulting agreement. We finalize details over the next hour. His assistant sent contract documents by Sunday evening. My attorney reviewed them Monday morning and approved. I signed and returned them Tuesday. The first month's payment hit my account Wednesday. That evening, I had my first video call with Hyperion's new payroll systems team. 5 engineers, all looking nervous and overwhelmed. Let's start with the basics, I said, sharing my screen. The payroll automation system has 3 core components: calculation engine, database integration layer, and payment processing interface. Let me show you how they work together. For 2 hours, I walked them through architecture diagrams, explaining design decisions and documenting quirks they'd need to understand. They asked good questions. They took detailed notes. They were clearly competent people trying to learn a complex system. At the end, their team lead thanked me. This is incredibly helpful. We've been struggling to understand the logic behind certain processes. The documentation going forward should prevent that, I replied. But feel free to send questions between our sessions. After the call, Angela asked how it felt talking to Hyperion employees again. Honestly, fine. I'm helping the new team, getting paid well for it, and Summit is thriving. I'm in the best position of my career. Hyperion lost everything they had because they didn't value what they already possessed. 6 months later, I walked into Summit Solutions headquarters for a quarterly all-hands meeting. The payroll platform my team had built was launching in 2 weeks. We'd secured contracts with 15 major clients, including 3 former Hyperion accounts. Maxwell started the meeting with company updates, then turned to my division. Alex Morrison's team has delivered something remarkable. Our new platform is faster, more reliable, and more feature-rich than anything else on the market. This is going to transform Summit's position in the industry. Everyone applauded. My team had worked incredibly hard, and this recognition meant everything. After the meeting, Olivia pulled me aside. Did you hear about Hyperion? No, what happened? The Titan merger fell through completely. They're restructuring again. This time it's serious. Rumors they might file for bankruptcy protection. I felt a complex mix of emotions. Not pleasure at their failure, but rather a sense that justice had been served. They treated employees as disposable, made decisions without understanding consequences, and were now paying the price. My consulting contract with them had ended after 6 months. The new team was functioning independently, armed with proper documentation and training. I fulfilled my obligation and moved on completely. That evening, I received an email from Troy Fletcher. Thank you for your professionalism during our consulting engagement. Your knowledge transfer was invaluable. Best wishes at Summit. You made the right choice leaving. I replied simply, good luck with everything ahead. As I closed my laptop, I thought about everything that had happened since that conference room meeting 6 months ago. Being fired had felt devastating in the moment, but it had forced me into a better situation, better pay, better title, better culture, better future. They called it budget cuts. They'd made me expendable. They'd assumed the system would run without me. And then payroll called in a panic 2 hours later. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's building something better and watching your former employer realize too late what they lost. I'd done exactly that, and I'd never looked back.